everybody, welcome to episode 4, sending everyone all the good vibes and warm wishes because it's almost summertime. Get your winter butt off your couch and go for that run you've been putting off until tomorrow for the past 3 months. But you're probably thinking, no way, my house is so comfy. But why the hell not? Because I think it's valid to investigate why you're more comfortable sitting still than moving your body and giving it the love and support that it deserves. So I'm going to challenge you. Start by just sitting up. If you're sitting in a chair, you're sitting at your dining room table, you're in your car, just correct your posture a little bit. Straighten your back and straighten your shoulders. Take a deep breath and feel the oxygen that reaches every corner of your body. You're going to take a deep breath in and take a deep breath out. And as you take that deep breath out, you're going to feel the tingles of your fingertips, the tips of your toes, and maybe even a little bit of a head rush as you get fresh blood flowing through your body. Taking a deep breath and counting out to 4 activates the opposite system of your adrenaline system. So it calms your body down. It tells your body to get out of the fight or flight mode, and it tells your body to rest and digest. In today's episode, I'm joined by men's mental health advocate JD. JD hails from Bristol, England, and is working towards getting his certification and becoming a men's counselor to support the struggling population of men that are coping with mental wellness challenges. And a bit of a disclaimer, today's topic is about the struggle that many of us have encountered when trying to live our lives with post-traumatic stress disorder. More importantly, the focus of our episode today is about a military veteran who's returned from years in Afghanistan, trying to redefine what his normal is. Disclaimer, as there will be some difficult topics covered in this episode, such as discussions of self-harm, addiction, and life in the military. Please listen with caution and take care of what you need first and foremost. According to the Canadian Mental Health Association, post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, is a mental illness. It involves exposure to trauma involving death or, most importantly, the threat of death, serious injury, or sexual violence. Something is traumatic when it is very frightening, overwhelming, and causes a lot of distress. Trauma is often unexpected, and many people say that they felt powerless to stop or change the event. Traumatic events may include crimes, natural disasters, accidents, war or conflict, or other threats to life. It could be an event or a situation that you don't experience yourself, or something that happens to others, including loved ones. PTSD doesn't discriminate against age, gender, ethnicity, or sexual orientation. PTSD can affect all of us in a variety of ways, including intrusive thoughts, known as flashbacks, depression, unpredictable emotions, anxiety, bad dreams, or just a sense of impending doom. For many people, alcohol and drugs is a way to find peace with these thoughts and cope. While most people experience trauma at some point in their life, not all traumatic experiences lead to PTSD. We are not sure why trauma causes PTSD in some people, but not others. But it's likely linked to many different factors. This includes the length of time the trauma lasted, the number of other traumatic experiences in a person's life, their reaction to the event, and the kind of support they received after the event. Trauma is not always a single event in the past. Some trauma, particularly repeated acts like abuse or trauma during wartime, can impact a person's life far beyond the symptoms of PTSD. Welcome to episode 4. JD, you are a men's mental health advocate. Can you give us a bit of an introduction about who you are, maybe why you got into that, and anything that you want our viewers and listeners to know about you?
Yeah, sure. My name's Josh, AD. I have, let's say, 10 years. I've suffered quite a lot myself with mental health issues, through anxiety, depression, maybe a little bit of agoraphobia. And there's been times where I've been very, very, very low, in a deep, deep depression. And when I came out the other side after having some counselling myself, I decided to look into starting my journey into becoming a counsellor myself. And really, I wanted to help men more than anything, because there is such a stigma around men sharing their mental health issues. I just wanted to be there for other blokes, really, to ensure that they had an outlet. And I'm not the most conventional of looking counsellors. I am a rather large gentleman with a big beard and a bald head, so I might look a bit different, but actually sometimes maybe that's what people need to relate to someone, someone who's normal. So yeah, that's kind of me, really.
Thanks, JD. Thank you for sharing part of your journey, and that's really vulnerable. And it's really hard to share who you are, especially on a platform like Twitch or doing a podcast, because I feel like we open ourselves up to potential ridicule. But I think that since that's such a first response that we have, it keeps us from seeing the gift of sharing ourselves with others, which can be vulnerability and connection.
Yes, definitely. It's good to have that vulnerability there so that you can actually put yourself in someone else's shoes, and in order to really understand them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then that breeds true authenticity, and it makes us feel less alone, I'll share a little bit of my story as well. And this is actually how JD and I became such tight friends. JD and I met when I was starting streaming, and when I was starting this whole content creator journey. And I would say that I was not in a good place myself. And it's so funny, JD, because I look back at how you and I have progressed as human beings over our relationship, and how much we've both changed as people. And it's just so interesting to look at how we're so far away from each other, but I call you one of my best friends, it's
I do the same for you.
Thank you, my love. And it's just, we have these very similar values. And when I started streaming it, and I don't talk about this as frequently as I used to, but I hadn't played video games in years. I grew up with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I grew up with The Sims, and I always felt like a lot of video games were for boys, right? Which is ironic because of what you just said about a lot of, I think both genders deal with a lot of different polarizing issues. And so I felt like it was for boys only. So I stayed far away from a lot of video games. And lo and behold, that's kind of what brought me back to myself, was having the freedom to feel strong and feel like I can put my mind to something and do something and accomplish a goal that I've set for myself, and have other people in my life celebrate those wins with me. And that was given to me through video games and through Twitch and through expanding myself as a person. And now I've started on this fantastic journey that 8 months ago I would have had no comprehension was possible.
I think with video games, I mean, with anything that you restrict yourself from doing because it's not the norm to do it, I think when you actually start to do those things, you'll feel a sense of relief almost. You're being your true self, your normal self, It's what you want to do, and nothing should stop you from. You should do what you want to do.
Absolutely.
And you can accomplish anything that way.
Absolutely. I think this is a really, really good time to segue into the letter. So we do in the podcast, we do a live reading of the letter. We do an introduction, and then we read the letter that was sent into the Ask Mecca podcast. This story is so powerful and impactful that I think that it deserves to be told, but that means we are dealing with topics such as suicide. We are dealing with topics such as self-harm, depression, addiction issues, a lot of raw, challenging human experiences we go through when we're going through a trauma. A lot of people have a hard time discussing these things, and that's why I feel like these need to be talked about. Dear Mecca, I'm writing this letter in hopes that it will provide inspiration to anyone that is struggling with depression. I am a disabled veteran that has been diagnosed with PTSD. With the help of my parents and my wife, I was helped to stay positive during my 2 years of healing and physical therapy. I am now able to walk again with assistance with a cane and enjoy some mobility. As with all things in life, there are highs and lows. Not too long ago, my father died. And when he died, something inside me died also. I grieved with many tears and still do, even writing this letter. 2 months after he passed, my wife and I received word that her mother had tragically passed away also. This led to a very toxic and unhealthy coping spiral where she tried to soothe her wounds with the help of drugs and alcohol. I felt helpless watching her spiral down, and my efforts to help have no effect. In June 2019, I came home from getting groceries, being happy because I didn't use the scooter to shop, but I walked. As I walked in the house, my wife told me she couldn't live like this anymore and that she was leaving me. I tried to ask her calmly what was going on, but she had called the cops before I got home. The next morning, she zeroed out our joint bank accounts and savings accounts. In September, during our divorce, I found out that she was having an affair while I was in active duty and continued to have it while I was in recovery from my wounds. Whatever self-esteem and joy I had was gone. I remember going home feeling nothing, being clear-minded, and I wrote my suicide letter. I put on my full dress blue uniform and I was going to end my life. I got a knock on the door. It was the local authorities. My brother had called for a welfare check because my wife called and said she was worried about me. She'd never seen me look like that. I remember one of the deputies saluting me and crying with me and saying it was going to be okay. This led me to being hospitalized for 30 days under supervision due to the fact that my body was rejecting many different medications. Under my doctor's suggestions, it was decided to wean me off medication and try other means of therapy. Since January 2020, I have been making progress and have stopped self-isolating. There have been many days where I wake up and stare at the ceiling, many nights praying not to wake up in the morning, and many anxiety attacks, crying in the shower for being fearful of going outside, getting angry at every little sound. I'm trying to stay positive, but it's pretty hard these days. April 1st, 2020, as it seems the world has gone to shit. I'm trying to stay positive. I don't know what to do with these emotions. Some days they can be overwhelming, and other days I can't even get out of bed. I don't know what I need from this letter. Writing this letter gave me a sense of closure, but any advice or support you can lend would be helpful. If you feel like me every day, get help, because you're not alone. Signed, Discharged and Distraught. All right. I was starting to cry reading that letter, JD. Are you okay?
Couldn't hear you, yeah.
I was I'm not laughing because my response to any negative emotion is to laugh first. So it's just like it's a trauma response. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to fight back tears. Oh, that is a heavy letter.
Totally is. It very much is.
Yeah.
It's hard to deal with all of that.
So I think the first thing that I want to say is like in appearances, in someone's first look at me is that I'm not someone that would have any idea what this feels like. And on one degree you would be correct, because I haven't been in hand-to-hand combat. I haven't had to have bullets thrown at me. I haven't been on the front lines. But I have had my own wars along with many other people. We've all fought our own battles. And what's fantastic about living in 2020 is that the term PTSD is such a vernacular that we use every single day now versus 5 years ago. I have residual PTSD from growing up in a challenging home atmosphere. So that means that my nervous system has been challenged in a way where certain emotional regulations that I have don't work the same way as someone that had a stable upbringing. So I get really, really, really aggressive, and I can get really emotional at the drop of a hat because my regulation system has been still tilted from my own PTSD. So where I haven't been in combat, I have a similar effect in my nervous system, so I can relate to that degree of waking up with anxiety, having your emotions respond to you at the drop of a hat. Like, you're just so you can't explain the world in front of you because your reality is not what other people's reality is, what you would perceive as a normal reality. And that's my own sense of frustration, because I need to have constant communication with those around me because the world doesn't make sense to me. And I have to have trust in those that are around me that the world that they're telling me exists. And so I'm constantly doubting myself because of my PTSD and my own anxiety issues. So that's where I can understand this story, and that's where I have an amazing amount of empathy, because this journey, while it's unique to this person's experience, this response of your nervous system is very human.
With PTSD, I mean, I've not experienced it myself. I mean, I understand that he's gone through, or they've gone through, the injuries due to military warfare and everything like that. I've never been in the military. I've never experienced that myself, but I am partially sighted, and I have had operations on my eyes. If I don't wear contact lenses, I'm practically blind. So I do understand what it's like to have your self-esteem completely destroyed by something that's completely out of your control, you know? When it comes to things like PTSD, people do tend to get hyper-vigilant, aroused, not in a sexual sense, but more in a sense of any situation can trigger you if it's similar to what you've been through previously. So you do become hyper-vigilant and make sure you're not in those situations. And it can result in you just avoiding people altogether, you know?
And that can be incredibly dangerous because it's isolating, and it enhances the other comorbid side effects of that disorder. Because if you have to isolate yourself so that you're not triggered, you're now losing that emotional connection that will provide you healing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you get from PTSD and many other mental health issues, you are going to get things like especially with PTSD, nightmares, flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, all that kind of thing. And that really affects your sleep as well. And like you said, you do suffer sometimes with anger outbursts, and that can be from lack of sleep a lot of the time. And it just knocks you for six, not having that sleep. And at the end of the day, I think we all understand that sleep is such an important thing that when we don't have it, the next day we can't function. And that really, really affects our day-to-day life, you know?
Absolutely.
You probably suffer with insomnia. I have as well. So it can be really difficult.
Oh, it's awful.
Really, really difficult.
Yeah, it's awful. It's incredibly challenging. And what's interesting is, and this is why the number of vets in the States, a large percentage of military vets are homeless, because we're coming into a point of having a better understanding of how mental health has seriously affected the rest of a human being's life. Because you can come back and appear to be fine, but what is your new normal? You know, your new normal will never be the same normal as someone that hadn't gone through what you've gone through. So in that regard, going to the grocery store, the amount of effort that will take is exhaustive, because you're going to get triggered by car honks. You're going to get triggered by engines starting. And that is immensely exhausting on your nervous system, because it's demanding so many more calories get burned. And then on top of that, if you didn't get sleep the night before, then your body responses, like your biomechanics still aren't functioning at the peak that they should be functioning at. So you're tired. And then the next day you're going to try to go to work and you're already exhausted by the time you get to work. So you can't keep a roof over your head. So it's a vicious cycle because of you doing the incredibly courageous thing of putting your life on the line for your country. You can't keep a roof over your head because you are stuck in that cycle of your body is processing a very powerful trauma that you can't find an end to, and thus you can't feed yourself, you can't keep a roof over your head, and that's why many vets end up homeless.
I can agree with that. It must be very, very difficult to... Well, I mean, just from an anxiety point of view, I know when I've been in the depths of my situations with anxiety, I know I haven't been able to leave the house at all. I mean, if I do go out, I have to have a support, like my parents, like a friend with me close by so that I can have that comfort.
Can you walk me through the process of you being like, I need to leave the house today? What is the internal dialogue that you go through to get yourself out of bed and out of the house? And then what do you do while you're out? And I ask these questions to provide our listeners and our viewers perhaps a touchstone of someone that has gone through maybe what they're battling right now. And so paint the picture for someone that is stuck in that moment right now.
A general day when I have to get ready to go out, and I am suffering with anxiety. If it's really severe, I would have been up most of the night anyway. And you'll wake up to the point where you feel like you're being suffocated already. So it's really hard to actually just get yourself up and do something.
Like there's a weight on your chest. I've had that where I physically can't breathe, right?
Completely, yeah. Such a weight on your chest that you feel like you do get out of bed. It's a case of trying to get that shower on or the bath on or whatever it may be. Get in there and get ready, basically. You do eventually get ready. You maybe talk to your parents or talk to your friend and say... And you call them or do you text them? Here? Usually a text. I wouldn't be able to make a phone call at that point.
Right? Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like, I don't think phone calls are an option.
Yeah. I might text them the day before, something like that, but I'd need them to be there at that moment that we'd said that it's going to be. So it can be really... the reason why that is because if somebody isn't there at that time, you'll get worried that they're not actually going to come at all, that you're not going to be able to get that thing, and therefore what you were going to go out and get, you're not going to be able to have that comfort, because that's the reason when you're going out is because you need to get something to comfort you in your time of anxiety.
And then I can hear in your thoughts that it's just a spiral where you're like, there's one thing after another that makes it more and more difficult. You know what I mean? And it demands more and more of your energy to just get something as simple as getting milk to have a hot chocolate. Like that's my go-to comfort, is having a giant hot chocolate and watching a comfy movie that I watched when I was younger, that from happier times when I'm stressed out. And if those people aren't there, my thought immediately is they forgot about me or something happened to them. Those are my first two thoughts. And then that's my PTSD that comes into play, where I'm just like, I just immediately think that everyone's forgotten about me. And that's knowing that is my body's response to those moments, that helps me have like, okay, my reality is distorted right now, something's happening, I've been triggered, and it's something as subtle as someone forgot about me.
And you do eventually leave the house. It's a case of when you get, say for example, I remember an experience when I was going through it. I went to the supermarket with parents, and I remember just walking down the aisles and I would feel like I was starting to have a panic attack, just literally for being around other people, and you're worrying about what other people think of you. And actually, most people, I think in their 40s, don't actually give a shit about what you're doing,
but
what you
it's
look like.
Crazy, because in those moments, like, and if you have the self-awareness to know that those moments, you're out there and you're like, okay, shut up, bad brain. I call it my bad brain. So if you have those moments and you're like, someone thinks I look like a piece of shit, someone thinks I look homeless, when in reality, the first step is having that inner monologue to have that other voice yell at you and say, yo, dude, you're lying. Like, that is not true. But it's so hard to get to that spot of telling your bad brain to shut up.
I call it my dark passenger.
Your dark passenger. Yes, that's who you call it. That's right. Yeah.
So the reason I call it my dark passenger is because I've tried to separate anxiety from me as a person. And the reason for that is because anxiety isn't me. Anxiety is a separate issue.
You are not your anxiety.
I'm not my anxiety. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
That's, I think, key to me dealing with anxiety is that I have separated depression and anxiety from me as a person.
Mm-hmm.
I know I am an empath, just like you.
Yeah.
And I know that I pick up on people's emotions so quickly, and I feel the emotions as soon as they walk in a room, and it could affect me for days sometimes if I'm around someone who's really
oh my God,
anxious.
it's exhausting.
I also think, switching that around is that because you do suffer with mental health issues, usually for me, if I speak to someone else about their mental health issues, I am the calmest I could ever be. I will stop worrying. I'll stop thinking about myself. I'll just think about them, and I will stop and listen.
And do you feel like that is compromising your emotions or compartmentalizing, or do you feel like you actually feel better?
It makes me feel better.
Really?
Personally, I know it's not always the same for everyone else, because I know they're taking on board somebody else's. They're making space for somebody else, and that can be exhausting in itself.
Yeah.
For me, though, I do find that listening to other people and to see it's so rewarding, really rewarding, to the point where it makes you feel like, okay, no, hang on, I can do this myself. I feel like,
and you are about 6 years older than me, I believe. So you might have that on me where you are a different, your sense of self has been solidified a little bit more than mine has. Because I do know that I'm quite guilty of taking on someone else's trauma and owning it as my own. And it's really hard to discern that and draw the boundary between if you're already full as a human being, having to take, like, holding space for someone else, it can be, especially if you're an empath, as you said, it's exhausting. But then how can you connect with someone else if that's your first point of connection of this is how I show love to someone else, is holding space for them, when I realize I've been denying myself space to be with myself. So it's not a perfect science, but I just admire that you're able to get joy from that.
I think it's the ability to decompartmentalize. That's a hard word to say. That isn't your issue. That is their issue, and you don't have that issue. I know it's you get the feelings of somebody else. I can feel them physically, and it can be very difficult at times, depending on, especially with this letter that this person sent in. Yeah, you can see that they are extremely caring, and they want to help, because they've said several times in there about helping and being distraught, looking at their partner collapsing with this addiction, alcohol addiction, and drugs and things like this. And you can see that this person really does care about this kind of thing, and it must be very, very difficult for them to see that. And to be honest, he's been through so much throughout the whole of that letter that anyone, no matter who they are, would suffer. No matter what trauma, no matter what you went through, anyone would do the exact. I promise you, this would be a very common response to this experience, and I hope that would make our listener feel less alone. If you are pushed to the boundaries of your coping skills, and you're pushed to the boundaries of I have no more tools to handle this. What do? Your last resort is to do something drastic to just end the suffering. And dude, I've been there. I've been on the dangerous territory that you were. I wasn't hospitalized, but I was very much in a place. I've almost been hospitalized 3 times, and I realize now this is three years ago now. I look back now in hindsight, and I'm very happy that nothing progressed past that point of danger. But at the time,
all that I knew was my identity was wrapped up in, I had no more tools. I had nothing left. I couldn't proceed. I couldn't do anything else. And JD, I don't know what it's like. It's almost like you get an adrenaline rush of you're at a fork in the road of doing one decision or the other. And somehow you just do the right decision to keep your beautiful existence here. And that is something to be absolutely celebrated. And I just admire the cop that was there that held him and cried with him, because and that's when I got really emotional, because I'm like, I see this, and he saluted him, crying with me, saying it was going to be okay. And then I can't imagine him. They walked together to the hospital. Like that gives me chills, like I got chills all over.
I think clearly his story is moving for anyone that hears it,
Yeah.
And that policeman that went to the property to see him could clearly see how much pain he was in.
Yeah.
And that itself shows that he did need that help, and maybe being isolated for those 30 days actually really helped him. And to be honest, I'd say to anyone listening that if you are having suicidal thoughts during this time that we're in right now as well, during COVID-19 and during anything else,
very dangerous for mental health right now.
Yeah, it is, to reach out for help, because even if it's a grey, you wouldn't do anything about it, but you're having those thoughts, reach out anyway. It's really important that you do, because if you don't, it could progress further, and nobody wants that.
Like we internalize so much because we don't want to be a burden.
I tried myself 5 years ago, and I've got a friend called Lauren who has been my best friend for years, and or one of my best friends, and she's just such an amazing person that she took me out of that situation and just really calmed me down and got me out of that, and I just fell asleep in the end.
So
luckily I didn't do any harm.
Can you walk me through, I apologize for cutting you off, I just think it's very valuable for you to kind of walk us through you reaching out to her and how you did it, how you reached out to her, and then the first thing that she did. I just really want to paint that picture of how importantly pivotal that moment of connection is to our listeners and viewers.
So I think at the point of you feel like you need to act on it, you are going to think about the people you're going to leave behind. And as somebody who's suffering, you know that you do love your friends, you adore your friends and your family and everything like that, and you don't really want to leave them, but the pain is so bad that you feel like you have to.
And you feel like you're just hurting everybody else.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So from my point of view, I wanted to reach out to the people that I loved the most, and that's what I did, and they were there for me, So at that point, it was the right thing for me to do, is to reach out to that friend and to explain what was going on and how I was feeling, and just really to that something was going to get better,
And it always does. It always gets better.
Well, yeah, always gets better. Yeah. I think after that attempt, I did. I think that's when I became an empath. Something must have triggered in my brain, and I just started to feel things differently. It's really strange, but after that point, I really felt like I could relate to people so much more.
I feel like that's a really excellent segue to discuss how you and I have talked at length about this, but toxic masculinity, and especially this was someone coming from an environment where crying was deemed as weak. Showing emotions was what girls do, and I know there's incredibly strong women in the military, but I know that any sign of weakness, which can be deemed as any kind of emotionality, that can be frowned upon in the military. So I think it's a valid time to discuss. Not only was this person dealing with PTSD, but they were dealing with shame. They were conditioned to feel behind emotions. And JD, I would love to hear your perspective on that.
I think from the point of view of a man who does express my emotions. I do feel deeply about things, and I've watched those shows on TV where they're doing up someone's home, and I'll cry. I've watched chat shows and I'll cry. There's all sorts of things that will make me cry. Maybe it's my time of the month, I don't know. But for me, I feel like, and I've cried to partners before, and sometimes the reception is warm, and sometimes it's completely not what you want. You're not getting any reassurance from them. They're just kind of pushing you away because they can't deal with it themselves.
Because they haven't come home to themselves as emotional beings as well. And I think that's a huge part of living in 2020 is that we're kind of coming home to being emotional.
And I think if we block out any emotions, we are technically just ignoring them and burying our head in the sand. And we all know what happens when you bury your head in the sand. Things get so much worse.
That's when I started my love affair with alcohol. Not trying to make light of a very serious thing, but there's a reason that I haven't had a drink in over 2 years, because it does nothing positive for me. And I'm also on medication that it interacts very, very, very poorly with. But that was one of the ways that I tried to make a bad decision. And I had to be escorted to the hospital because the cops were just like, I had the foresight to call a distress center, and then they called the cops. And it's really, really hard if you are stuffing your emotions, they will come out eventually.
They will come out, and they might not be in the right way. Yep. You wanted to. I find with things like anxiety, anxiety has its way of overwhelming you. So this dark passenger that I talk about is somebody who takes control of the driving seat. So you are normally in that driving seat. Now, when somebody else takes control, they own the directions. They tell you exactly where they're going, and you have to follow them. It's about then realizing that is the case. So if you're going through trauma, if you're suffering with something, if it's anxiety, PTSD, or something like that, it's recognizing that it's not you that's feeling that. It's not you you don't want to react that way. It's about stepping back from a situation, taking your time and going, okay, I need more time, and that's okay. I can tell that person. And it's about communication as well. It's telling that person, right, okay, I'm really sorry. I can't deal with this right now. Maybe even use a safe word in any conversations you have with your partners or your friends.
We've done that, you and me, and with our relationship when we're both emotionally too full. I deem it as a point of respect for each other, where we both, once we use that word, then we both know we're okay, we're safe. We're dealing with a lot of heavy shit right now.
Exactly, yeah. And that safe word itself is then, as soon as that's mentioned, okay, I'm respecting that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give them that space they need. I'll check in with them.
Mm-hmm.
That itself is showing love. Yeah. To your friends and your loved ones.
And it's giving them what they need in that moment, which is compassion, as you said, love and respect, as well as telling them that you are here for them within the parameters. They are allowing you to be there for them while they're figuring out their shit.
Exactly, yeah. And I think a lot of the time within relationships, it can be very difficult to accept that. If you're in a position of, you're distraught yourself, it can be very hard to accept that.
Well, I think especially when she was encountering that severe loss of her primary relationship of her mother, totally. I think that's incredibly anyone that didn't have PTSD, if they were someone suffering with base level depression, they would respond the same way, because she's lost her primary relationship, she's your primary relationship, and you're going through shit. All these relationships are bouncing and dancing around each other, and they're getting destroyed because of external influences that have impacted each person individually, but the ripple effect is so large.
And to give some background, I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness. And up to the age of 16, I was a Jehovah's Witness. And after that point, I was in bands. I was in emo bands, and I was out partying a little bit and all that kind of thing. So I left. I didn't believe in it. It wasn't for me. But up to the point of 16, God was always the forefront of any situation. Like, family was second, if you like. So I think when I was growing up, the fact that God became before me and before anyone else was me losing my bond with my family, with my parents.
That must have been so hard, JD.
Essence, it's really difficult. Yeah, it is. Don't remember mention of love as I was growing up. So it does get very difficult to then to know what love feels like. And I think in these situations with this person and the wife as well, they both. Now, when we first initially are born, the first bond we form is always going to be with the mother if we're breastfeeding or anything like that.
Yeah.
So because of that, then that bond is broken. That's the first bit of trauma we experience.
Yeah.
Now, when we go through life and we and meet someone new, like a new relationship, we fall in love, that is a new bond forming. Yep. But if that breaks, it takes you back to that first initial bond that was broken. That I've gone through that suicide attempt, I now know that if I do anything, and I'm not going to be able to work on that, I'm not actually going to eventually be able to settle down in a relationship.
Yep.
I'm not going to be able to try to be a better person, to help other people.
You're denying yourself the opportunity for evolution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do like the thought of looking to the future and going, okay, change, or this could, be better, and this could do whatever it may be. Is then you've got some kind of goal that you can work towards, you can focus on that.
And I think what's interesting is when we're in the epitome of being without our toolkit and feeling like we don't have a tool to solve the problem, that's I think that the weirdest way to look at that, but it's something that I started thinking about when I went through like one of my most emotional things that I was processing was I realized that sadness and grief and the really, really, really painful emotions make room for you to really deeply feel the amazing emotions. And the more time I have between when I was in a dangerous spot to now, that has shown me that the good emotions are far outweighing the bad emotions or anything that I've felt in those moments that was difficult. But if all that like when I realized that depression, like if you realize that you have long-standing depression, life is not supposed to be hard. Life is not supposed to be difficult. It's actually not. And when you realize that you can be happy and you're feeling happiness for the first time, it can be really scary because you're like, oh my God, wait, I've been battling depression for 20 years. Shit. Like, you're just like, this is like, am I high? Like, you're just confused because you didn't realize that your normal was not normal.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's normal is very different.
Yeah.
Everyone's normal can be completely different, Yeah. At the end of the day, I think like for someone who does suffer with some form of depression, anxiety, some form of mental health condition, I think it's good to be realistic and say there are always going to be ups and downs.
Yep.
But then there's always going to be ups. You're going to get out of it and it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And you're talking there about grief. Both of these people have experienced a lot of grief.
Yep.
And there's several different points to grief that you go through, and this person is hopefully coming into the acceptance stage to the point where they are, kind of dealing with it and able to be a bit happier. And there's fleeting moments within the letter that show, okay, so my disability that I have is getting better. I'm able to walk around the shops rather than
it might have been
those
something.
little things.
It might have been something that you, when the injury happened, you might have been like, oh my God, I'm never gonna walk again. And those little wins the amount of things that had to come into play in your body to give you the gift of being able to walk again. That is incredibly, it is miraculous, because some people just can't do it. But knowing how your neurons work, knowing how your muscle tissue has to grow back, every single thing, that is an enormous win.
And I think you should focus on every win.
Mm-hmm.
So what I try to do is, when I'm having really tough period, I will focus on the wins, like changing my bedding, like doing the washing up.
Oh, that
even
feels so nice.
Small.
Changing your bedding is so nice.
Exactly,
like, it's little things like that. I absolutely agree. It feels like a hotel.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And even to the point where, when I had been suffering a lot, I'd managed to save a bit of money, and I bought myself a fridge, and I felt so good. Felt like I'd accomplished something so massive for me, because I'd never bought an appliance in my life.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. I love that. Buy yourself a fridge. Like, and something as simple as providing yourself your basic needs met, like giving yourself a fridge. What that does is it gives you feel like you're responsible. You feel like you're an adult. You feel like you're self-sufficient, independent. You're doing the thing. And that, like, I have that. You just gave me your feelings. I just have this like this empath energy of knowing how amazing that feels. It's like getting your first apartment, just those big, that is a big win. But to some people, it'd be nothing. But to you, that was the epitome of, this is me.
Yeah, I'm accomplishing life.
Yeah.
Winning.
Yeah, you're winning at life.
Exactly, yeah. And I think anyone that's going through anything is to focus on the little things.
Yeah.
You can't focus on the big parts of what the end goal. Focus on the small things that you're doing on a daily basis that you can say, I feel really good about that. I got up today. I feel really good about that. I managed to make my bed. I managed to make myself a nice meal, or a cup of tea, and I sat down and watched Netflix, and I feel comfortable. I've got a clean blanket, and I've wrapped it around me. Anything like those things, they're really important to just focus on those things and to know, okay. No,
when I was in more intense therapy, I was talking to my doctor about making myself a self-care kit. So it's what I would do. So my brother got married 4 years ago now, and that was very emotional for me, because the divorce that my parents had gone through was very, very tumultuous, very aggressive, and I was in a family of extremist evangelicals. So you and I have talked at length about how they're very similar to Jehovah's Witnesses, and that's a very blanket term, but it is, the very similar side effects of people that are empaths. And those two families were coming together. So my family of origin was reuniting for the first time in over 20 years. And so what I did in that moment was I made myself a self-care kit for that day. And I didn't drink that day. I was like, nope, that was my first gift I gave myself, was no alcohol, because I deserved to be present, and I deserved to handle that moment with the most care and empathy and love for myself, because I knew it was going to be hard. I had a year to prepare, but it was going to be very difficult for me. And so what I did was I made a little box, and in the box had lavender essential oils, which for me is very calming. A lot of people find lavender very calming, and you can get those at any dollar store, drugstore. It's just like a scent. Even a lavender candle, they're usually purple. So then I had that, and I had soft texture. So I had something that I found soft was just like a pillowcase that I like a jersey pillowcases I love. They're very soft. And I would have fake fur. And what that does is that calms your nervous system down, because you're giving yourself tactile sensations to bring your body back to the present moment. So if I was vanishing and going back into my old trauma and the person I used to be in a really challenging situation, I could bring myself back with that self-care kit. And I just had it in the purse I was carrying around at the wedding, because if I needed it, I could use it right away, and I'd come back, and I would be able to be present in the moment to celebrate my brother's wedding, and to celebrate seeing people I hadn't seen in a long time, and how much they've grown, and what have they become of themselves in the 20 years. It gave me the ease to forget about how difficult a divorce was in the 90s.
You got to remember as well, when you made that kit, you were putting all the things that you really loved into it, and when you start using that care kit, you take yourself back to that point where you started making it.
And the intention behind that was caring for yourself.
Exactly, yeah. And that then brings you back to that moment where you were safe.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's finding safety. That was such an important word you used, was safety.
I think, in that sense, safety is what you need when you're suffering with anything. Mm-hmm. Is just to feel safe and to know that you are safe.
Yeah.
Someone telling you, safe here.
You're safe. You're wanted. You're loved. You're valued. You are important. And it just makes me. What I see with this letter is what this makes me feel is this is someone that perhaps right now in the state that they're in, maybe they don't feel safe because their nervous system is constantly telling them they're not safe, but it's finding the self-awareness to know that you don't feel safe right now. It's 5 a.m. I'm staring up at the fan. I'm wide awake. I'm having a panic attack. But the more you work that muscle in your brain that you tell yourself you're safe, the stronger it's going to get.
Well, often if I'm having a really tough day, I will get myself out of bed. I will literally shake myself, look in the mirror, swear now, and I will tell myself in the mirror, fuck off, you can do this.
Yeah. And that so really important.
Helps me because I'm then telling dark passenger, F off. I'm telling them, myself.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest for this person potentially is to name mental health issues. And if you name them, then start to often I think it's all about thinking about the figurative sense of, if you're carrying this huge amount of anxiety on your shoulders, on your back, it could be a large sack of anxiety. Mm-hmm. When it starts off, it's only a tennis. More you don't accept that it's there.
Yep.
Added to that, and it becomes bigger, football size, or it becomes then a basketball size, or whatever it may be. Then it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. But if you were to accept that anxiety is actually there, then sometimes, or more often than not, it will, and then it's going to go away. It will just go away, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
It takes time, of course, and I like cookies and milk when I'm feeling anxious.
Yeah.
Like Jersey pillowcases and hot chocolates and things like that, and have those things, and we have a cuddle with someone. Yeah. So the main thing to take away from that really is to have a support circle. Mm-hmm. Is to have that's really important to all have a support group to go to, even if it's just one person, even if it's your dog.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Animals are so important for recovery because they love you no matter who you are. They will be there for you no matter what. And the best part is that there's so many animals that are unwanted in shelters that you are actually very able to find an animal that, if you have allergies, if you need an animal that's more muted, if you need, there's a lot of options to give us that gift of companionship, because that is the first step to healing.
Yes, I agree. Mm-hmm. This person seems like throughout this, that they have mentioned a couple of times that they're trying to bring positivity to other people. So that I must say, I'm really proud of you for doing that. Really proud of you, because you were trying to help others, even though suffering so much. You've gone from having everything, you've been in the military, a good job, you had a wife, you've lost your wife, they've had an affair, which itself is so hard to deal with. Mm-hmm. My father had an affair a few years ago, and although it's a horrible thing to happen.
It's awful,
you
because
kind of understand it,
especially
sometimes.
Following that with a divorce, because there's there can be very painful to go through fixing an affair in a relationship and trying to move forward. But it's not just that. The affair it draws a strict line, and JD, I apologize if I trigger you. I just feel like it's important to elaborate, but it draws a strict line into a relationship that it's almost a loss of innocence, like in storytelling, where what once was is no longer, and it's a point of grief where you hit that point and you can no longer have that relationship you had, because you now have to reframe those parameters, and then to follow it up with a divorce where it's finite. Yes, you have the finite win of it's done. I can kind of try to move on, but maybe you weren't allowed the moment to grieve it to begin with,
Yeah. From my point of view, I knew that my mother didn't really understand mental health issues. And I think my dad was searching this out, somebody who understood him and made him feel welcomed. So although I don't agree with what he did, I do understand why he did it. And after that point, it brought us closer together. So I was trying to think outside the box with it, really. And this is what I dealt with through therapy is really... I came to the conclusion myself that maybe I need to think outside the box and think why he's done it. What might have brought him to that point where he felt like the only option for him was to seek out this comfort from somebody else. And now that means he's starting to repair because we are all a lot closer. You know, he tells me he loves me. And to be honest, the first time he told me he loved me.
Go ahead.
Didn't do it before. And the first time he told me he loved me, God. Oh, such a strong feeling, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just great.
It's very rare, but when it happens, it's beautiful when you can move past something and rebuild something and almost take the infrastructure and make it better. But it can be very challenging if especially if two people are battling their own inner demons, like what happened in the letter. And I think that was the best course of action, was separating these two human beings, because they clearly could barely take care of themselves, and taking care of a relationship was out of the question. Yeah.
I mean, I've got to the point now where I know this is off topic, but I'm starting to explore other forms of relationships, and I've started to understand that maybe relationships aren't meant to be there forever.
Yeah.
And yeah, we do form relationships with people, and we form bonds with people. Sometimes things can knock those foundations apart, you know, and in this case it has done, you know. The foundations have been rocked and destroyed. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't think about all the good times you had together and the fun times you explored with each other and did all the fun holidays and all that kind of thing. There are still memories there. That doesn't mean that you have to spend those memories with one person, like in this instance. It does end, sad. It's really sad, and you share more memories with that person. But that doesn't mean to say you're not going to be happy again and meet someone new.
Yeah, it's very finite when you say I'll never be happy again. It's very I think it shows almost a high school mentality when you're like, he's ruined my life is over. But what it does is it shows you that if you're responding that way, and this is not at all taking I'm kind of segueing here because this person's experience is separate from this mentality. But in my one of my most recent episodes, I was talking about someone that dealt with a difficult relationship, and that person was saying, oh, my life is over, like it's the worst thing that happened to me. And perhaps I look back in hindsight and I remember feeling that way, and I remember feeling bottomed out. I have nothing left. This person broke my heart. But what I realized was that I'd been so numb to my emotions for so long that I hadn't had the opportunity to feel. And then when I started to feel everything, then I could look back in any trauma, any grief, anything that was difficult in my life. I could look at that and be objective about it, because I'd felt this before. Oh, I've gone through this before. Oh, it's fine. Oh, this is normal. Everyone's gone through this. Oh, hey, this happened. This sucks, right? Oh, I know. It totally does. But I think the biggest moment for me in understanding relationships and the power they have, but also not being so intimidated by them, because I've talked about this before, but I've been very lonely for much of my life because I was afraid of intimacy and I was afraid of relationships. But when I hit that point was when I realized that every relationship has an expiration date, and that might just mean that you die together. You know, but understanding that there is not one person that you are meant to be tied to for your entire life. That gave me kind of some closure to understanding, like, there is lessons to be learned in every relationship, including the one that you have with yourself, but you are the only person that you are the best, most important relationship in your entire life. And so it's so pivotal and important to love yourself and give yourself the best relationship you deserve.
Indeed. Agree. Really.
I think this might be a good time to begin closing off the podcast. But JD, I think first off, if there's any parting thoughts you would love to give to our listener, and then also any advice about how this person can take their life and move it forward.
Yeah, sure. I think you need to remember that although you've gone through these really difficult times, there are always memories there. There are always memories. You can always live those memories again. You've experienced in the past. Keep a reminder of those things that you have done that on a daily basis that you can be proud of, and tell yourself you're proud of yourself.
Mm-hmm. I think that's it's really, really hard to look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm proud of you. One of my other friends in Toronto that I was very close with was a military vet as well. He was in Afghanistan for 10 years and he has no mirrors in his house because he can't look at himself in the mirror. That's his trauma. He has permanent brain damage from his PTSD. But the fact that he knows his value in other ways is important, but it's very hard to look yourself in the mirror. And if you have difficulty doing that, maybe that's the goal you set for yourself. Very small goal, but you just set yourself a goal of, I'm going to look at myself for 3 seconds. That's it. And then in 3 weeks, I'm going to try to say, I love you in 3 weeks. Baby steps, but it's something as little and powerful as that.
Exactly. I think you mentioned there is that your best relationship or the most important relationship is the one you have with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Treat yourself right. This is the thing I want to this person. Is to treat yourself with the respect that you deserve.
Yeah, absolutely, my friend. And I will say that I'm just so sorry you had such an awful set of 2 years there. And I genuinely hope that you are taking this chapter in your life as a part of your very important journey, and taking this chapter as something that is important, that doesn't define you, but it's a chapter in your story. And I hope that you can take this experience and channel it into maybe you become a counselor of holding space for others because you were trying to be positive for so many others, and maybe you take this experience and you spread vet awareness of how painfully difficult it is to come back and redefine what normal is for you. And the future that you have is infinite. And I want you to know that. I want you to know that your future is absolutely infinite. You can do anything you want, but right now it might seem hard, but I promise you that you are in charge of your future. And the fact that you wrote into this letter shows that there are little baby steps you're taking to give yourself the power back. I genuinely hope that for everybody that was listening, perhaps we've given you a gift of connection, self-awareness, or even just a moment to pause and look at yourself in a way that maybe you didn't before. And JD, if there's anything you want to say to our listeners or our viewers before we close it off?
If you're ever feeling lonely, tune into Mecca's stream, tune into any one of your favorite streamers and speak to someone. You don't always need to talk. It's sometimes just about being around people that care.
Yeah.
And that's an option, is you can reach out by not actually saying anything at all. You can just be around people.
I
feel their energy.
Just having their energy and having, sometimes if I'm not feeling the best, I'll just turn on one of my friends, crazy. I'll turn her on in the background. And I find her energy is enough to maybe get me out of a bad space, because she's just such a bubble of energy that's all that I need. Is just having someone's voice in the background. And so you don't feel the pressure to chat in someone's stream, but just knowing that someone's present with you can help you.
I feel like she's such a powerful woman, to be fair.
Oh my God, I admire that woman so much.
Definitely.
I want to give a big welcome to JD. JD is one of my best friends, and he's given me the privilege of having him on the podcast today. He is a men's mental health advocate, beginning his certification to become a male therapist, and I thought it was incredibly important today to have him on the podcast. JD, where can we catch you? What's your socials?
So my socials are Demon Rider Plays on Twitter, J Demon Rider on Instagram, and J Demon Rider on Twitch. And I stream far too much, probably around about Tuesdays to Saturdays, doing different games, talking to people, doing bits and bobs.
Doing the thing.
I try to be active on all social medias, but it can be difficult at times, so bear with me. But if you ever want to talk, I want to catch up on the streams, just have someone to hang out with, you're more than welcome to come and hang out.
Enormous thank you to my dear friend JD, again, men's mental health advocate. If you want to be on the podcast, please fill out the form attached in the show notes. We would love to have you, and do remember that every story submitted will be anonymous and any names will not be shared with co-hosts. I will be the only one that could know who the person submitting it is. And I hope that everyone enjoyed this podcast. For all my socials, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram, you can find me with the username Mecca Air. Everybody have yourselves a fantastic weekend and stay tuned for more Ask Mecca coming up in the coming weeks. Guys, if you like this video, please subscribe below, click the red button, and don't forget to turn on your notifications. I'll see you guys next time.